The human whose name is written in this notebook shall die. Death Note, a relatively short manga that ran during the mid-2000s, stands out of one of the great partnerships in manga history. Drawn by Takeshi Obata, then a veteran artist who already had several successful series under their belt, and written by Sugumi Oba, the pen name for an experienced author whose identity is still kept secret. Death Note is a calculated, exhilarating psychological supernatural thriller that helped popularize anime to a Western audience that was ready to move on to something that wasn't just boobs and blasts. While the manga, at only 12 volumes, can be split into two distinctive parts, I think it's better to examine the series as a whole by individual arcs. Part of Death Note's charm is seeing how the main characters either change or stay the same due to the increasing dangers of their environment. This is best observed in the first arc of Death Note, chapters 1 through 22. Light Yagami is a teenager who discovers a Death Note, a tool of great power that can kill anyone whose name is written in the book. Originally from the Shinigami realm, this notebook belongs to Ryuk, a god of death. For his own amusement, he leaves the Death Note on Earth and is highly intrigued when Light picks it up and embraces the rules of the notebook. With great power comes great responsibility is an often heard motto. But has anyone used great power corrupts all recently? Light immediately becomes drunk with power after realizing the full capabilities of the Death Note. He decides to become Kira, god of the new world, where he kills criminals globally, fear-mongering the rest of the population into behaving, else they be at risk of his wrath. At first, Death Note is played straight and you imagine that Light will accelerate to godhood rather quickly and without challenge, but very soon after, L appears, an adversary that may be more intelligent than our new lordship. Oba writes a thrilling introduction as the Japanese police partner up with L's organization to capture Kira. In a brilliant twist early on, Light finds himself trapped in the role of Kira as L deduces that the killer is in Japan. Things become increasingly tense as Light finds out that his father is leading the police on this case. Soon, Light is under the scope of the police, being questioned often about any ties that he may have to the Death Note, surveillance invading his privacy at home, and a growing sentiment amongst the public that regardless of if Kira is right or wrong, that change is happening and the world will never be the same. Death Note hits the ground running and never slows down. The manga is very reminiscent of Asian procedural dramas. There is a decent blend of action, espionage, drama, deceit, and death in every single chapter. Light, despite being a shonen ace, is clearly intoxicated with the power that he's been gifted. Ryuk gleefully helps Light stay off the police radar, but he vows not to get involved with Light's mission. Their interactions are so fascinating. They are not friends. In fact, you can tell that Light doesn't trust Ryuk for good reason, and Ryuk is just watching a movie play out that he already knows all of the major plot points too. This degree of apprehension towards the leads make this manga shocking without having to do anything bombastic. Obata and Oba provide so much world building and lore in this first arc. Rules of the Death Note and how it impacts Shinigami from their boredom to their lifespan, the Shinigami eyes, the vulnerability of the Death Note itself. There's even a good amount of perspective from the Japanese police force. As they mobilize on this mission, many of the members decide to resign from the force after they deduce that Kira is able to take the life of anyone whose name and face that he knows. Even though the humans have no understanding of the Shinigami realm, they're still acutely aware of a higher power being involved and how inferior they are to them. The way Ray Penber is murdered is very unceremonious, hurtful, but exhilarating. Light looking down laughing as the subway door closes. Ray looking up, realizing that he was duped into his own demise. Rarely do you ever encounter such emotional highs in a shonen manga off rip. Light quickly falls into the darkness when he starts picking off members of the police force. Instead of carefully thinking out how he'll get away with murder, he chooses the most conniving ways to end his targets' lives. This catches up with him as L notices Kira's cockiness and immediately suspects the teenage wonder kid of being the prime suspect. Obata embraces thought bubbles and close-ups throughout this series, in an era where comics and manga were rapidly abandoning that form of narration. As such, the early parts of Death Note feel older than it is. While I enjoyed reading out how Light plans his constant evasion, or how L theorizes that he can get a confession out of Light through an intense tennis match, it does feel like an abrupt shift that throws off the pace a little bit. But this is an endearing charm that shines a light on the characteristics of the cast. Later arcs would increase the pace and get more supernatural in tone. But early Death Note spends a lot of time examining morality, justifying one's purpose, and, most excitingly, how to get away with murder. Death Note is a classic for a reason. It's one of the most unique manga of all time. There really was nothing like it before or since. Oba and Obata hit the ground running with a manga that combines so many elements that you think it would alienate everyone. At its core, this arc sets the series up as a complex cat and mouse that has more of a focus on the psychological ramifications of always being suspected. But this is a shonen series, and ridiculous scenes such as the tennis match or epic chip slip shows you just how much fun these two authors can have while embracing campy manga tropes. Because of how odd yet familiar Death Note feels to other police procedurals, it makes for an easy recommendation to anyone, regardless of if they like manga or not. L vs. Kira is a weekly Shonen Jump greatest hit.